Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Files. I am joined today with Riana Milne, who is a best-selling author of books like Love Beyond Your Dreams and Live Beyond Your Dreams. You are also a certified life and love coach, as well as a childhood and love trauma coach. So welcome and thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thanks, Danielle. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
So before we dive right in, I would love to know how you got here.
Sure. Well, I took the traditional route of a psychotherapist. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, certified addictions professional, and student assistance counselor. So I had several degrees when I got my triple master's in applied clinical and counseling psychology, and then I went on for licensure. And I had my own practice called Therapy by the Sea in South Jersey. I'm from Philly. And then I always was building my practice as I took on other jobs. So the other jobs as a SAC counselor, student assistance counselor, I worked in every grade level, kindergarten through college, with the emotionally upset kids. It's not a guidance counselor. It's more handling the trauma, kids that are bullies, kids that are being bullied, the ADHD kids, the kids identified as oppositional defiant. And I was finding most of these kids come from traumatic homes. And then I also had a period of time where I was working at a hospital adolescent ward, child and adolescent. So those kids were ages 5 through 19. And these kids could have been suicidal, runaway, cutters, just extremely angry kids with their family situation, part of the foster care system, adopted kids. And then I worked at the Adolescent Drug and Alcohol Rehab Center, and I one for women that were women of the prison system. But despite the different populations and ages and cultures and backgrounds, I kept seeing the same top 10 childhood traumas impacting their mental and emotional health. So as I went through a love trauma when I was young at 24 years old, I divorced quickly and said, I am better off being a single mom than being in a toxic relationship. And the mindset for success that I started studying in my late teens was really what saved me and kept me very focused. I opened up a model and talent company with my first month's rent and had that successfully for 10 years. Within 6 months, it was won the Educational Excellence Award internationally. And within a year, it was Model and Talent School of the Year. And I was working with those models, actors, singers, dancers from age 5 through 80. My oldest model was 80, to reach their dreams and goals in the talent business. So the combination of mindset work to help kids in the schools many years forward is what I was using to help them heal from traumatic situations, to look at things differently. So what I do today is I am a global life, love, trauma, recovery, and mindset coach. And I use the hybrid of psychotherapy techniques, coaching, which is more educational, inspirational, motivational, to heal the trauma and help people create that life they really desire and to have the love they deserve. And I work with ages 16 and up, men and women, straight, LGBTQ populations, singles, and couples.
That's fascinating. So you mentioned that you kind of universally found sort of those 10 traumas that were sort of that common denominator. So maybe we can talk about what those 10 traumas are.
Yeah, I think it's important for your audience to know, since we have moms here, right? And if they are seeing any of these signs, it's important that we change those up within their home environment. When I work with parents, I make sure the kids are okay too. So we change any toxic environment that could have happened due to a volatile partner that they might have had, or a messy divorce, and they're single moms and their kids might be angry. This is pretty typical when people turn to me. So before I go into those top 10, Danielle, I want to make sure that if the moms recognize the childhood traumas within themselves, to know that this is not their fault, because they were a product of their environment as kids. And it is showing in the research that childhood trauma goes through at least 3 generations. So these moms, if they're seeing it within themselves, they might see some of these things in their kids today. but they definitely will see the traumas that had occurred in their mom and dad, and probably in their grandparents as well.
Which I can say as a mom, I definitely recognize that I will sometimes create rules or approach things almost like in spite of what I experienced as a child.
Yes.
And I mean, for better or for worse, all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, but that's going to create a different problem. So like, you can't overcompensate for your own experience.
Right. But we can learn from our own experiences too.
Exactly.
And I'll give a few examples of that, which
perfect.
I think is really important as we go along. So you can feel free to write these down and see how many you have. The first one is if you grew up in a home with a parent or guardian that had an addiction issue. So I named 12 addictions that could have been impacting your kids or yourself. Drugs, alcohol, sex, meaning you knew your parent was a cheater, porn addiction, gambling, hoarding, spending, eating, gaming, TV watching, workaholism, or social media and computer addiction use. Okay. Meaning they're always on the machines and not paying much attention to the kids, or giving a machine always to the kids instead of real human love and interaction. Okay, so that's one. The second one is verbal messages. So you might have seen mom and dad fighting a lot, or you might have heard them yelling at you. This includes verbal put downs or slurs like, you look fat in that, why don't you change your outfit? Or, no, you're not going to college, I'm not wasting my money on you, or you'll amount to nothing, things like these types of put downs. It also includes not hearing the words, I love you, or giving compliments, not getting any compliments. And I'm a baby boomer. So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm in my early 60s. And I was on the beach with about 7 people. I'm in Florida with all people about my age, and none of us heard the words, I love you from our parents. And it was the generation. And I finally, at 25, when I had my first daughter, 24, I said to my mom, your 5 kids need to hear the words, I love you. I just had a baby and I see how important it is. And I'm telling her all the time how much I love her. Why don't you tell us, these words? She goes, well, these aren't words I heard. I grew up in the Great Depression. And back then it was all survival, so there was no time for emotions. So you can see how her childhood experience impacted us as kids. And we never heard compliments. Our ways to get and show love was by being really hard workers. So a lot of the parents in my generation were workaholics because that's what love was, right? So it's really interesting how you go through what your experience was and how your kids say, like you might be a millennial, my daughters are now, and they might say, wow, my mom was a workaholic. Well, that's how we provided value to my parents, what I mean? So this is what I'm saying. It's intergenerational unless you know to really put balance in your life. So the second one is verbal messages. Very important for your kids to hear I love you and to get compliments when a job well done. Third is emotional abuse or neglect. Fourth is any physical abuse, beating or hitting, rape or molestation. Now, of course, any of these could happen inside or outside of the home. Your home could have been perfect, but you might have been bullied every day at school. You see, so these are just experiences as a child or a teen. Okay, the next one is abandonment. And there's 2 types that I named, fault and no fault abandonment. So a no fault abandonment would be if a parent died suddenly or when you were younger, if they had to go off and serve their country for war, or if your parent had to travel a lot, and that's how they supported the family. So they were away a lot, but they thought in their mind, I'm doing a good thing, right? This is how we support the family. And fault abandonment would be never being in your child's life, only being active while the marriage or partnership stayed together. And third, you might have been physically there, but emotionally absent. So as a therapist working with kids, I always heard, well, I have to go to custody to see my dad this week. And all he does is watch a football and he never talks to me. I'm in my room the whole weekend. Why do I have to go?
Yeah.
So this is a kid feeling very emotionally abandoned, right? That's just an example of that. Or they don't show up at your school events. You know, you always look on the stands for your parents to be there and they're not there.
Yeah.
Things like that. Okay. So that's fault and no fault abandonment. The next one is if you were part of adoption, foster care system, or you had to go live in another household, like too many kids, and a couple might have gone to the grandparents or the aunt's house or a family friend, things like that. One of my clients asked me once, well, if I didn't want to go home because they were yelling and drinking all the time and I wanted to be at my friend's house and stay there much of the time, does that count? Yes, that counts. Okay, that's an example also. Trauma number 7 is the one that most people can identify with. And when I did this research back in 2011 and 12, it said 9 out of 10 people are impacted by childhood trauma. And today they're saying 100% of people have trauma in their life when they were growing up. But when I did this list, 1 to 3 people had at least, 1 to 3 traumas on this top list of 10, and most identified personal trauma. So this is a big one. This is if you ever felt different or didn't fit in. So you could have been like a chubby or overweight child, or skinnier and gawky and called the nerd. You might have been born with a medical condition like asthma, or identified as ADHD in the school, so you always felt different or had to go to special classes or the counselor. It could be you're the only African-American student in an all-Caucasian school. It could have been you were coming out as gay or lesbian and not accepted or treated differently for that. So there's so many ways people can identify with feeling different or not fitting in or being bullied. So that's a big one. Okay. Trauma 8 is around the siblings. So your sibling could have bullied you. Your sibling could have been born with a medical condition commanding more of mom's and dad's time, and you were just kind of not paid attention to. Or most often you can identify your sibling as being the golden child, which is the favored one. So they could either be more handsome or beautiful, the star student, or the super athlete. And, the parents were always complimenting them and you were just kind of there.
Yeah.
So that's how that felt. Okay. Trauma 9 has 2 traumas, and really one was trauma 11. I had to bring it down. Like I said, there are more than 10. But when I was growing up, we barely saw community trauma. Now, this is one of the 3 everyone has experienced with the COVID pandemic, no matter where you live in this world. We all have experienced community trauma with this experience. This is also our Mother Nature events like floods, fires, hurricanes, tornadoes. It's also our mass shootings, our school shootings. So anything where the community is impacted at large. And if that occurs, of course, there is family trauma. So if we use COVID as the example, people have lost their jobs, their income, their homes, loved ones, right? And family members and so forth. So that can impact the family prior to COVID. And still, family trauma can include if a parent's incarcerated, or if you move a lot. Let's say our military in the US moves every 2 to 4 years. That makes the new kid in the school all the time, moving constantly. It could also be growing up in a poor or dangerous neighborhood. So you were afraid to go off to school. You were always feeling like you want security, or you heard a lot of lack messages, like we don't have the money to pay for food or the gas bill or for air conditioning. The lack messages are impactful when it comes to wanting to be a business owner, because very often you're afraid to invest in yourself.
Yes.
Because of those messages. Okay. And then trauma 10 is mental health issues in mom or dad. The baby boomers we did not see our parents go off to counselors. It was shunned back then. As a matter of fact, when I was really bullied in 8th grade, I said, Mom, I want to go see a counselor. I'm really sad about this. She goes, no one in our family will ever go see a counselor. And I said, then I'll grow up and become one. And I did.
And look at you now.
And that's what I do.
If you've liked hanging out with the Mom Files, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below.